Coming up, an Arizona tribe celebrates success after opening its first casino 30 years ago. And a new database shines the light of truth on the troubling history of Indian boarding schools. Plus, the Avengers are back, this time in the Lakota language. Next on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Native American employees at the University of South Dakota have been warned to stop adding their tribal affiliation in their email signatures. A branding policy was cited by the Board of Regents as the reason for warning John Little and Megan Redshirt Shaw to stop. Little said that non-compliance of the rule could put their university jobs at risk. These kinds of anti-diversity trends worry Cheryl Crazybull, who is the president of the American Indian College Fund and a USD alumni.
I worry so much about Native people because I think, we're tender when it comes to education. We fight for education, but when we're encountering things like practice that is intended to sort of eliminate our identification of ourselves, public, setting, it's regrettable.
The university also prohibits the use of gender pronouns in email signatures. A spokeswoman for the Regents did not answer questions about the tribal affiliations, as reported by the Associated Press. In Montana, a nonprofit is doing whatever it takes to increase participation of Native voters. With the primary election approaching, Western Native Voice has been canvassing and encouraging Native communities across Montana to vote. According to the nonprofit, while Native Americans make up only 6.5% of the population in Montana, their participation in this election could affect the entire nation. It is providing rides to voting polls, picking up ballots, and helping voters to register, among other efforts to boost Native voter turnout. In Alaska, millions in federal funding will go towards improving water infrastructure in rural villages. $225 million from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency will be used to develop safe drinking water and waste services to improve public health and environmental protections in Alaska communities. This funding will enable tribes to make critical public health upgrades, such as servicing line replacements and installing wastewater infrastructure. A new app is providing mental health services for Native American veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs boosted funding and has launched Hero Story, where interested veterans can register. It is set to provide virtual talking circles and discussion ceremonies. The platform was developed by a company called Televada, which won a Veterans Affairs grant for innovative ideas for veteran suicide prevention. The company found a need for this app due to Native American veterans having one of the highest suicide rates, according to the VA's most recent suicide report. Well, Sunday, June 2nd, marks the 100th anniversary of the Snider Act, which granted citizenship to Native American people born in the United States. Crystal Echohawk of Illuminative tells ICT it's a complex issue.
We are organizing in partnership with the Native American Rights Fund and the Native Organizers Alliance a National Day of Action and Reflection. Because this is a complex issue, and I think this is worthy of creating lots of conversations across Indian country about what this means, what this upcoming election and so much more means to us as Native peoples living in the United States.
For more information on the Snider Act, you can check out yesterday's interview with Polly Dinette-Claw. A social media kit for the National Day of Action and Reflection is posted at illuminative.org. If you have ever visited the Phoenix Valley, you've likely driven by various casinos owned and operated by local tribal nations. One example is the Gila River Indian Community, which is an alliance of two tribes, the Acoma Adlam and the Peeposh. 30 years ago, in June of 1994, Gila River opened its first casino and has now grown to the largest casino enterprise in Arizona. I'm joined today in Phoenix with Gila River Resorts and Casino CEO Kenneth Manual. Hello to you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
So we know that you all are celebrating your 30th anniversary, so exciting.
Yes.
But I want to start first. Take us back to the first enterprise that was opened in June of 1994.
Basically, that's where I started my career back in 1994. I started out actually in the slot department. It's one of the many departments that exists within the enterprise. I started out as a slot attendant. It's one of the line level positions within the casino. And so I was there on opening day. My badge number is actually number 19, which means I was the 19th employee for the enterprise back in 1994. I think I was all of 22 years old, but it was an exciting time for the Gila River Indian Community. I'm also a proud member of the Gila River Indian Community, so there's a lot of pride and a lot of joy along my journey with the enterprise.
And I imagine that it could have been totally venturing into the unknown because Arizona before this hadn't had casinos, and so it really was taking a leap of faith.
Exactly. I know that the legislature at the time, back in 1993, when the compacts were signed, it was something that was negotiated in good faith between the tribes of Arizona as well as the state and the legislators at the time. So it was exciting because Vegas had already had gaming, had casinos within the state of Nevada. So this would be the first time for Arizona to have casinos.
And if you are talking about present-day Phoenix, you hear and see the words Gila River all over the place, whether you're watching it on a commercial on TV or you're seeing sponsorships at the Arizona Cardinals games or the Phoenix Suns games even. What are the ways that you think that Gila River has really changed the narrative about visibility and what tribes are capable of here in the Phoenix Valley?
Definitely. Gila River Resorts and Casinos has definitely evolved as an enterprise. We've promoted our brand through so many different venues and outlets. We have amazing partners, the Arizona Cardinals, the Phoenix Suns, ASU, just to name a few. And so a lot of what we do is not only hospitality and creating memorable experiences for our guests, but also getting our brand out there in the Valley, in the state of Arizona, and just continuing to promote. We evolved through our marketing, we evolved through our partnerships, we evolved through just the different relationships that we have in the Valley.
You mentioned those NFL teams and the NBA teams. How does the tribe and the venture at large choose who they want to partner with? I imagine that's a difficult decision.
It is, and it's something that we started out very early on with. We were one of the first tribes in the state of Arizona. I believe we might have been the first tribe to actually partner with a Major League Baseball team many years ago. And so just getting our name out there, just promoting the brand, promoting what we do as an organization was important to us. Just like so many other businesses and services that partner with some of the professional sports teams out there, it was important for us to also get our name out there.
You mentioned earlier that you started at Gila River Resorts and Casinos on the floor. Did you ever dream that you'd be the CEO? And tell us more about that.
I get asked that question quite often. To be honest, no. When I first started with the casino back in 1994, I had no idea that I was going to eventually become the chief executive officer. I take great pride in the fact that I've learned from so many different mentors over the years, whether it be through business, whether it be through family mentors, my parents, whether it be through community mentors, different governors, different administrations within the Gila River Indian Community. So many folks, I believe, I owe my success to them because they took me under their wing, and they were very instrumental in my development and where I'm at today. So there's a lot of folks that I attribute my success to.
You know, being a citizen of the Gila River Indian Community makes you uniquely qualified for this job. But tell us the ways in which it does do that. You know, the fact that you were raised in the community, as you just said.
Correct. I grew up in District 4 of the Gila River Indian Community, Stothanek. I grew up before gaming existed within the Gila River Indian Community. So there is a lot of history that I have, not only within the enterprise for the last 30 years, but also but also growing up within the community. So I've seen firsthand exactly how the community has benefited from gaming and from hospitality. So it gives me a lot of joy and a lot of pride in the success that we have, because I know exactly who benefits from the success.
That was the CEO of Gila River Resorts and Casinos. We'll have part 2 of our conversation with Kenneth Manual next week, so make sure you tune in then. We'll be right back. The Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition works to address the wounds of a troubled era, and the organization has just released a new tool in their work. It is the first piece of what will eventually be a comprehensive database of the institutions designed to forcibly assimilate Native children. Stewart Huntington caught up with archivist Fallon Carey to talk about the National Indian Boarding School Digital Archive, or NIBSTA.
Fallon Carey, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much for having me and taking an interest in our database.
You've just released a new portion of your database. Tell us about that.
The database is framed to do two things. So first of all, it is a presentation platform that can bring together materials that NABS, staff and contractors have digitized ourselves. And it also acts as a centralized hub where there are other digitization initiatives that have happened across the country. We can pull their materials from their websites and their digital archives and feature them in our database. And so with that, we currently have about 39 student indexes. And so those are going to be student lists that were originally curated by the schools themselves.
And this will help families trace their relatives who were forced into these institutions?
Due to privacy law, there's a 75-year rule. And so all of our materials are going to be pre-1950s. So a lot of the materials that we're capturing now are from about the 1880s up to that 1950 date. And so we do have a lot of folks who know that their family went to boarding schools, but now are going to be able to go into our digital archive, and whether they find them on the list or they are able to actually see their family's records, it is definitely geared towards tribal communities and being able to, we always talk about how in Indian country, because of the effects of boarding school policy, there's truly this open wound that, has reverberated, it's in every community. There's not a single person, Indigenous person in the United States who hasn't been affected by boarding school policy. And there is a real open wound there. And the point of NIBSTA is to, address the wound. And so we can move forward in a better way. And, it's really to promote healing, because if we address and we have access to our own histories, then we can then take that knowledge and move forward in a better way.
And on the release of this database, you've put an advisory warning people that they might come across some disturbing information.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these records originated in boarding schools, and we know historically Native peoples were not described very respectfully. And I think that has the capability to cause a lot of harm. And, we do have elders, that is their history, that is their lived experience. And I think it's really important to address that. Some of these records may cause distress, especially for a boarding school survivor. And so going forward into our database, just, be gentle with yourself and understand that you may need to step away and take a break, call your family members. We talk to a lot of boarding school survivors and, making sure that we take care of our elders. And I think it's important to say also that the way that Native children and peoples were described in these records is not a reflection of us as Native people. It truly is a reflection of the way that those administrators and the folks who operated these boarding schools saw us. Boarding school era policy truly was to stamp out Indigenous cultures, disrupt, our family structure, and engage in land dispossession and resource dispossession. And that's very evident in the records.
And one of the goals ultimately is legislation, a truth and reconciliation legislation.
Yeah, we've been working on a bill. I can't say we because I'm not the policy people, but we're very, very hopeful that will happen soon. And it will establish a committee to do a more extensive investigation into boarding school era policy. And I think the important thing is it's going to have the capability to open a lot of doors in which are currently closed to us, which, it's primarily a lot of the church-run archives.
And Fallon, is this important that the entire country understands this horrible chapter?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, American Indian history is U.S. history, and this has largely been completely removed from the history books, like we know so many other things have. But especially with NBSTA, the data is there now. We're not going to be ignored. Boarding school policies' effects on Indian country will no longer be ignored. You can't ignore data if it's in front of you. And I think that's another key component of NBSTA. It's there for the general public to go through, and it's there for researchers to do work to further understand the complexities of this policy. And I truly think that, in addition to the work that we're doing in Washington with our bills, NBSTA is another key component of addressing boarding school era policy in the United States. Not only, for Native peoples, because we've already been doing the work. I think that it's going to open a lot of opportunities for other folks to start doing the work as well.
Thank you very much for your work, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
A favorite Disney and Marvel Comics movie will be released on Disney Plus soon, and it is The Avengers, dubbed in Lakota. It's from the Lakota Language Reclamation Project on the Standing Rock Reservation. ICT's Leah Mesquita and Shirley Snavy talked with the creators of the translation project.
Start! One of
the questions we sat with is how can we make the language as appealing as we can for our students, because we could talk to them, and we have talked to them about how important our language is, the philosophy behind our language, the beauty in our language. But at the end of the day, they're kids. They're interested in all kinds of various things that kids are interested in. My daughter's into TikTok reel, our YouTube reels, TikTok. She sends me memes and different things like that. But one thing that we kind of noticed around Halloween time is that the kids, about 75–80% of them, when we're handing out candy or when we have stuff at the school, they're all dressed as Avengers. And then another thing that the elders always tell us is that language starts in the home. So how can we get language into our kids' homes, into the community's homes, And how can we do it in a way that's really appealing? What if we dubbed the Avengers into Lakota? And Chuck said that he could ask Mark. Mark, he came to Standing Rock during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. And so he had gotten to know Sister Jody here and brother Chuck. So Chuck reached out to Mark, and Mark started working on it. And then we didn't think anything of it for a couple months. Out of the blue, we're on this meeting with all these execs, and we're looking at all these people, and we didn't prepare anything, we didn't prep anything, and then they kind of swung it to us and say, kind of, what are you guys doing here? And then we just explained and talked about what we wanted to do, and how we had wanted to dub the Avengers into Lakota. They gave us the approval, and that's kind of what we were looking for, and that's kind of where we thought it would end, is that they would just give us the approval and we would figure this out on our own. But what ended up happening is Marvel and another studio called Deluxe, they helped us through this whole process. And so we just started translating with the elders. They would think of words like spectrometers, helicarrier, tesseract, radiation, different things that that we may not say every day.
The casting part was one of the more funner parts. We went down to Thunder Valley. We got to speak with a school down there, a bunch of kids, and they spoke nothing but Lakota, and it was real cool. They sang with us, they hung out with us throughout the day, and then we had casting calls up here, and people came from all over the place. And I remember we had one at the casting call out of Powwow in 48 here, and people were coming up from college, from Haskell, or from Shadron, Nebraska, and they just all wanted to be part of this. And so even if they didn't make it, they wanted to be able to say, hey, I tried out for that.
When Ray called and said, get over here, we need somebody for Iron Man, I was like, holy smokes, like, I'll do it. Like, it was like unreal. And getting to Zoom with Robert Downey Jr. and have him say my name, it was just like, whoa, it gave me chills. Teaching K-12, college level beginner to more advanced, like, you got to get into it, like, you got to teach them, and you got to be exciting, you got to get the attention. But doing the dub is different than that, because you're sitting at a screen, you're looking at the mouth, and you're trying to say it as fast as you can, but also trying to keep the language in there. And the first 2 hours, I think, Lars was like, quit being humble, be more confident, like, without like Chuck and Lars and Ray sitting in the other side of the booth, they helped a lot to get into character. Like, you really had to be Robert Downey Jr. and how confident he is, how cocky he is, and it was awesome experience.
By using a platform like Disney, it's going to not just be in Lakota homes, but in thousands and possibly millions of homes. And just having the language spoken in and of itself is a huge victory. I think the hopes for this project, and I think the reason that Disney was so interested in it was because of Prey, and they had used the Comanche language in a large part of the script there. And I think people just forget that there are other worldviews, other languages that predate English. So the indigenous languages are some of the most underfunded places that philanthropy or the government have invested in, but they took a lot of money to take them away from us. The government spent millions and billions of dollars to take our languages from us. And we want to have projects that are positively spinning out of that kind of dark times. It's also the cornerstone of tribal sovereignty. So in this context, we do need to have an understanding that without our languages, without that worldview, without the deep, I guess, place-based knowledge, we are going to slowly become something that is not recognizable to our ancestors. And the language is the biggest key next to land.
Being the little res kids that we are, we're like, we're finding out more and more like how like how big this is and how big it's gonna be. And so I was like, holy cow. So when you just said that, like it's hard to get on streaming, I just that blew my mind again, like because we're very fortunate and very lucky to be able to be part of this project and be to have all these opportunities. And I truly believe it's the language that's paving the way, and so that's awesome.
The Lakota dub of The Avengers premieres on May 31st in McLaughlin, South Dakota. Other screenings in North and South Dakota are planned before the June 14th worldwide premiere on Disney+. That is a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit us at ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.